Generating traffic and sales can be a challenge for online merchants. But selling on the Walmart Marketplace puts your products in front of millions of customers who shop on Walmart.com. And right now, sellers who join Walmart Marketplace can save up to 50% on referral and fulfillment fees for the first 90 days. So get started today. Head over to marketplace.walmart.com/savings. That's marketplace.walmart.com/savings.
Welcome to E-Commerce Conversations, a weekly podcast focusing on e-commerce topics featuring interviews with prominent people in the e-commerce space.
Welcome to E-Commerce Conversations by Practical E-Commerce. My name is Kerry Murdoch. The term drop shipping refers to selling an item that is not in actual inventory. Many e-commerce merchants use drop shipping, at least in part, to reduce their inventory cost and to offer slow-selling products for sale. Our topic today is the pros and cons of drop shipping for e-commerce merchants. We are joined by Jeremy Hanks, an online drop shipping pioneer, and now the co-founder of Dropship.com, a software solutions provider. Well, Jeremy, thank you for your time today.
Yeah, you bet.
Jeremy, you are an expert in the drop shipping business, of course, being the co-founder and CEO of Dropship.com, which we'll get to that company here in a sec. But my first question is, our audience is mainly e-commerce merchants, established e-commerce merchants with freestanding websites that sell a specific product. Should those type of merchants offer drop-shipped items in addition to inventoried items?
I believe that the answer to that should be 100% yes, and the reason that I believe that is because when you look at the physical, typical retail physical supply chain, every time you move inventory, you drastically reduce the available products of the supply side that you're ultimately trying to match to the consumer demand side. Just because the reality of three dimensions of size and space and money makes that reduction happen. And so as a merchant, when you say I'm only willing to put on my website what I purchase, these niche items and things that I deal with, you are also saying I'm reducing the choice to my consumer. I'm reducing my ability to match supply to demand. And I think in today's world, as far as we've come with e-commerce, and especially looking to the future as far as where I think e-commerce is going to head, I really think you should seriously consider how you can use an inventory-free model inside of your retail strategy to add other products that you can try to match that supply-demand question.
Jeremy, to play devil's advocate with you here for a sec.
Yep.
I am not a drop shipping expert. That's for certain. But a critic on drop shipping may say something like this. A critic may say it's too complicated, and that it's too complicated in that the merchant, like in the scenario that you described, the merchant has to communicate with the drop shipping supplier, has to confirm that the drop shipper actually ships the products, has to provide the details to the consumer, and so forth. And that additional amount of administrative work is not worth the trouble.
Yep.
What do you say to that?
Yeah, I think that I think those concerns are incredibly valid. A couple of thoughts. First, I would say that's no more complicated than your readers and the people that are engaged in e-commerce dealing with the retail to consumer transaction in an online virtual way. So that kind of critical view of drop shipping would have been the exact same view that people would have taken in 1995 and 96 and 98 and even some companies still take today, which is, how am I going to deal with a consumer that's not going to walk into my store? I don't have a salesperson who's an expert. I can't show them and touch and feel the product. How am I going to get them the product? How am I going to do customer service, and so on and so forth? And so what the answer kind of that I have there is, in a lot of ways, the first 15 years of e-commerce has been answering, more skewed to that kind of retailer to consumer type complexities of a virtual business. And a lot of those things have been made far simpler and have been made, in a scalable way because of technology and because of software and because of companies like Magento and companies like eBay and companies like Amazon and all of these big companies that are being innovative from that business to consumer type relationship. And so some of those complexities have been answered. And what I see is it's not that that critical view is very important, but that in the supply chain piece, and when I say supply chain, I'm talking more about the business-to-business side of this whole thing, between manufacturers and distributors and wholesalers and the retailer component of it. Just like the business-to-consumer questions have become, less and less of a question, the business-to-business side is evolving at this, in the same way, and it definitely is evolving at a different pace. And so, today there are solutions that address some of those complexities and can make that piece of it actually work. And it is complicated, but I would say it's no more complicated than all of the long list of things that you could write down around, as an online retailer. How do I find consumers? How do I market to them? How do I build relationships? How do I do CRM? How do I, do fulfillment? Shipping. Those things are very, very complicated as well. And most of the time, people say, "Well, there are systems that can help me with that." And I think I see the same kind of trends happening more on the business-to-business side. It's specifically around drop shipping and kind of the strategies around how all of that ties together.
Good. And I'm looking forward to addressing that here momentarily about some of those systems, because I know it involves your latest venture, dropship.com. So we'll address that here momentarily. Talk to us, Jeremy, about the process, hypothetically, the drop shipping process for our listeners who aren't necessarily familiar. And let's say I sell a product, running shoes, hypothetically, okay. And I want to, I carry running shoes, a certain amount of running shoes on my e-commerce store, inventory those, I buy the inventory. I want to supplement that inventory with drop-shipped items to sort of fill out my product offering, just following from what you just said a minute ago.
Yep.
Walk us through the administrative aspects of that. An order comes through, it's got items that I have in inventory and an item or two that needs to be drop-shipped. How would I handle that on the back end?
Yeah, so, this is a great question. And the way that it's all kind of deconstruct it from the point of, I've got, let's say that you have 250 running shoe SKUs in stock. You have 25, models of shoe that come in 10 sizes. So the first step of I think kind of what you're asking is, maybe there are more running shoes than that. And the obvious answer is yes, there are more running shoes than that. Even from the brands that you sell, if you have Nike and Adidas, there are far more running shoes than what you may have, where you can say, I stock 10 sizes of each shoe that I sell. So the first thing is saying, I want to sell more product. I want to take the supply that the companies who make these shoes have, and I want to be a better conduit of matching that supply to my consumers' demand. And so the first thing, the administrative piece is catalog information, pictures, descriptions. You have to be able to put that on your e-commerce website. And the next component of that is closely related, which is inventory. If you're going to work with a distributor for Nike, you need to know. Say you've got 25 different models of shoe and you want to have 250. You want to 10 times your product. Well, all of those other models, you need to know where they are and how many that there are, and in all of the different sizes. And so that process is kind of inventory, quantity on hand, and product life cycle type issues around discontinues and back orders and such. And then the third piece is you've got to be able to get orders to the supplier and receive tracking back. So those are kind of the back office, kind of administrative aspects. Is number one, I've got to get catalog information on the site. Number two, I need periodic, probably daily, inventory updates around those virtual products I just put on my site. Kind of number three, I need to send orders back to the supplier to fulfill, and kind of 3A is the orders, and 3B, I need to be able to get tracking information back that I can relay to my consumer. And typically, the way that you manage that, you can do that manually. A lot of it depends on the kinds of numbers and frequency that you're talking about, or you can start to move down the road of automation around those processes as far as maintaining that administration. And the minute that you start looking at making it a little bit more scalable and a little more automated, you're typically on that administration question trying to figure out how to get your business to consumer front end e-commerce platform to communicate kind of to those three processes. And there's a lot of ways to do that. There's all the way from, again, manual to full-blown kind of seamless automation with different tools like EDI and XML, and a lot of that just depends on who your trading partners that you're trying to work with are.
What does a merchant in the scenario, the hypothetical scenario that we're discussing with a retailer that sells running shoes, what does a merchant say to his or her consumer during all that, his customer? I mean, at what point does the merchant tell his customer, okay, I'm going to be shipping you, this pair of shoes that I have in inventory, and the other item that you ordered is coming from our drop shipper or coming from our supplier directly. What does a merchant say to his customer?
Yeah, I think what you want to be transparent and upfront about it, because at the end of the day, if that happens, a lot of e-commerce is one order, and so a lot of times the consumer is going to either order the pair of shoes that you stock, or they're going to order the pair of shoes that you're having drop shipped, and they're just going to get one box. And so that might not be as important to communicate. But if they're going to order two pairs of shoes, and one comes from you and one comes from someone else, it's going to show up in two boxes, and so they need to understand that. And that's a lot of the thought around the communication up front from that business to consumer side of the equation, and your web store, and being able to know which product SKUs are coming from which place, and that's where I would say do what Amazon does, and basically just at the point of checkout you need to have that functionality that says, well, the things in your cart may come from multiple places, and as long as you're upfront about that, and then can give some customer service around that and say, what, item number one just shipped because I shipped it, and here's your tracking number. Oh, item number two just shipped, here's your tracking number on that's coming kind of from the vendor. But, it's very, very common. Consumers, even again, back to Amazon point, consumers are used to things coming from different places and different warehouses, and it happens a lot, and a lot of the largest retailers out there, in fact, almost all of the largest retailers out there, employ drop shipping and supplier, direct fulfillment practices. And so I think as long as you're transparent and upfront with your consumer, I don't think any consumer is going to have a huge problem with it. And in fact, some companies actually take it and really market that, and this is available only online, and they actually put some more positive marketing around it, like we have a larger selection for you. It's all about we're trying to give more choice to you. So they take some of the advantages of drop shipping and kind of this inventory-free retail strategy, and they really market and sell those. And that, in essence, you're selling the good of it, and you're also simultaneously setting the expectation from the consumer side of it that when the nuts and bolts of the fulfillment happen, maybe you're gonna get two different boxes. And I don't think there's a huge problem there as long as you're upfront with it.
What about shipping costs, Jeremy? Who pays shipping cost in the scenario we're talking about? Two items are ordered, so that in my mind, that we've just doubled shipping cost or we've increased shipping costs. How is that typically handled?
Yeah, and it's exactly right. You know, shipping 2 boxes of air is going to cost you more. You know, I mean, so it is exactly true that if you have a percentage of your orders that are those mixed orders, where some of it's fulfilled from your own, logistics capacity and your own inventory versus drop shipping, you are increasing those. Typically, the retailer pays the actual shipping costs to the vendor. Part of that is, if I'm the vendor, I'm saying I'm holding the inventory risk on your behalf, Mr. Online retailer. So you're going to have to pay the shipping, on the product, because I've taken kind of some of the cost and risk onto my plate for you, so you can make this sale. And what we see as kind of a best practice is most of the time retailers, and this is where having some amount of data and just kind of running some scenarios, even just in Microsoft Excel and things, and looking at some of your order history. It's if 10% of your orders are getting fulfilled from multiple places, that changes it much more than if it's 90%. And so looking at some of that data, and most retailers do shipping based on price, and they kind of run law of averages, and even saying, hey, over $100 or whatever, you kind of get into that whole free shipping dynamic. But from what we can tell, most people still run by those kind of strategies, and they're able to make it work on averages. And sometimes it's about keeping the customer happy, and they were able to buy the shoes from you versus a competitor. And maybe because you had some extra shipping costs and things, maybe your margins were reduced or potentially even eliminated. But the order came to you instead of somebody else, and so there is value even in that extreme kind of case.
I'm wondering, without really knowing what I'm talking about here, I'm wondering if, in fact, a merchant that uses a blended strategy of carrying inventoried items and drop shipped items, of offering those on his or her website. It strikes me that the drop-shipped items are going to be those items that aren't as popular and potentially aren't as competitively priced, and therefore may be less susceptible from shipping pressure as more commodity items. Is that even close to being accurate? Or?
No, I think you kind of, it's hard to always make those sweeping generalizations, but I think that is one that would more often than not prove to be exactly right. That, your ability to move, into a broader product range, it can significantly start to change the whole dynamic of again, it's the supply-demand kind of macro-level questions, and then down at the smaller level, it's about margins, and it's about the cost to get those products. And it's important to remember that although you're eating additional shipping costs, what you did not have is inventory carrying costs for a period of time, because those costs, dynamics never hit, they never hit you as the retailer, because these products lived at some other place. I mean, and as long as you can connect those virtual data points around the catalog and the inventory feeds and an order exchange, although you may be increasing some costs to actually make those sales, because now there's additional shipping costs and things, what you didn't do is have to deal with a lot of the inventory costs and or limitations by saying, well, I only have 25 shoes, versus that there's hundreds or thousands of shoes that are out there. So I look, and when you net that all together, it typically falls out that it's a net win, and that's why I think you see so many of the largest retailers and even a lot of large brands and distributors engaging in the strategy and pushing and supporting virtual inventory and supporting drop shipping.
Who are some of those brands? Name just a few for us.
Yeah, so you could look at Costco, Home Depot, Walmart all have massive drop shipping programs. We just got back from a show in Vegas last week called the Hardware Show. Home Depot had armies of people going around to all of the exhibitors, which at that show are typically manufacturers, basically saying, look, I'm never going to put your stuff in my stores, but I'd love to drop ship your products online. Big brands, Carhartt, is a company that we are connecting into. Because you think of a clothing company with all of their different products and all the different colors and sizes. They have thousands and thousands and thousands of SKUs. And for small merchants, the ability to even buy one product, one shirt and pants and work gloves across all of those different sizes and materials and colors, you're talking about hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars just to get one of things. So the idea of saying, well, but a company like that, they have it. They have warehouses, and if they can do fulfillment on the behalf of somebody else, if I can connect into that, and if they're willing to allow me to do that, and some of those bigger brands have they have restrictions on who they will and won't work with. But if you can make that work, there's something very, very powerful around saying I can take the supply of those work products from Carhartt, and I can, as the retailer, I can keep that supply 100% as I position and put that in front of a consumer, versus saying it's 5% or 2% or the whole the number that I saw years and years ago in the outdoor recreation, it was 13% was the average number of products that a specialty retailer carried from the brands that they were authorized. And so there's such a decrease in that supply to demand. It can become very powerful, and you see these huge companies. There are companies like Wayfair that are doing it. They're a $500 million a year on their way to $1 billion, and they're completely drop ship retailer. They never touch any products themselves at all. So, back to a couple of your first questions. There are complexities with this, no doubt, but it should not be just dismissed as something that can't happen, because the largest companies out there do it at scale, and they do it very successfully. And what I see is, again, kind of to that point earlier, the world is evolving, and it is becoming such that smaller merchants can deploy these strategies as well and be successful at doing it.
We have just another minute or so here, Jeremy, and tell me about your new venture. You're the founder, of course, of Doba, which is pioneering drop shipping reseller, if I could use that term, and now you've launched a new venture, Dropship.com. Pardon me. Tell us about Dropship.com. What does it provide, and what are you doing with that company?
Yeah, so through Doba over the years, we lived the pain ourselves of saying, we need to integrate. In our history, we've integrated Doba with hundreds of drop shipping vendors, and it is a complicated process. The catalogs and the inventory feeds and the orders, and everyone uses different formats and different business processes. And so we started Dropship.com to basically try to build software to address those problems, for small, medium-sized businesses and merchants, where we can deploy systems and solutions and integration services and kind of that whole mix to help connect all of the dots and to provide a drop shipping software platform that people can use to start and or grow their drop shipping program. So that's our complete focus. That's why we named the company Dropship.com, is to remind us that we're focused on solving that problem.
So a merchant listening to this can go to Dropship.com. Can a single merchant work with your company in terms of?
Yep, definitely. We're interested in people that are trying to solve that problem, and saying I want to work with at least one vendor, if not more. And how do I connect my business to consumer focused system to this more supply chain problem of that catalog inventory order process.
Okay.
And that's what we do, is try to help with the software solution.
Anything else, Jeremy, as we're wrapping up? Anything else on your mind for our audience of e-commerce merchants?
The last thing, we kind of hinted a lot around, but I look at a very simplified view. There are companies that make things, there are companies that sell things, and then there are all of us as consumers that buy things. And I think for e-commerce merchants, they've typically lived inside of the sell things world. What I'm seeing is a lot of blurriness happening, and it's kind of been the whole conversation of e-commerce for a lot of years. But it seems to me that more and more companies that make things are also selling things. They've decided to sell direct to the consumer. More and more companies that have been pure, resellers and retailers are starting to understand maybe I can start to look at creating my own products. And so I think, inside of that world, there is a lot of things happening. And so I guess, just as an e-commerce merchant, I would really be focused on, how in this changing world, I personally believe that the next 15 years of e-commerce will be far more disruptive than the current 15-year history or so that we've had. So in that kind of dynamic, how do I continue to focus on my uniqueness so that you don't get caught up in kind of a race to the bottom type scenario, but how can you continue to be unique and successful as a merchant? And how do you look at these changing supply chain dynamics and drop shipping, and if a brand can sell direct to the consumer, well, on one hand, he's competing with you now, but on the other hand, that means that logistically he can support you as a drop shipping vendor. Mm-hmm. And so, it's a good and a bad thing. So I guess that's just the last thought is to be nimble and to really focus on what is your unique proposition to the world of why you deserve to exist as an e-commerce merchant. And don't think that you may have an answer to that today, but that answer may not apply tomorrow. So always ask that question.
Okay. Well, for purposes of our listeners, we've been visiting with Jeremy Hanks. Jeremy is the founder of Doba, which is a pioneering drop shipping company, and his latest venture is dropship.com. As he described to us, dropship.com provides software to link retailers with suppliers and manufacturers. That's dropship.com. And Jeremy Hanks, the co-founder of dropship.com. We thank you for your time today, sir.
You bet. Happy to help out.
Thank you.
That's all the time we have for this week's e-commerce conversation. I hope you enjoyed it. Please tune in next week for another new episode.